Well, hello. Welcome back, rebooters, to the channel. My name is Noah Church, as you probably know, based on the name of this channel. Today, if you're watching this, you get another behind-the-scenes look into me creating an episode of Love People Use Things, the podcast that I co-host with Matt Frad, all about pornography and its effects on us personally, on our relationships, on our sexuality, and on society as a whole, how to recover from sexual dysfunctions that come from pornography use and pornography addiction. So you probably already knew all that, but today is going to be a special episode. I hope that you stick around and watch here or go over to lovepeopleusethings.fm where you can download or stream the audio from this episode. Listen in your car, listen in an airplane, listen in a golf cart, in the shower, wherever you may desire. And also listen to past episodes. This is my 5th as a co-host, but Matt Frad has been making it for longer than I have. So there are plenty of his episodes backlogged that you can listen to. A lot of wisdom in there. I hope you benefit from it. All right, let's get started. Good day, guys and girls. Welcome back to the Love People Use Things podcast. My name is Noah Church, and that's about the limit of my Australian accent. Welcome back, everybody. This is Love People Use Things, the podcast that I co-host with my Australian-turned-American friend, Matt Frad. I hope he appreciates my little introduction there. Matt and I, we live different lives, have very different belief systems. I am non-religious. He is a Catholic apologist and well-known within the Catholic community. And we may disagree on a lot of things, I admit it, but we do both agree that pornography has great negative potential to harm us personally, harm our relationships, and harm society as a whole, and the fabric of the society that we are trying to build. Pornography has had a very negative influence on my own life since I started to use it from a young age, probably 9 or 10. At the time, of course, I was too young to know or understand all the negative impacts that it could have and would have on my life. So I didn't really realize it until I was an adult. And that's how it is with a lot of people in society today. The majority of men in the modern developed world use pornography on a semi-regular or regular basis, and more women are doing the same. It's a very pervasive presence in our society, and it affects much of how we interact with each other, how we think about sex and relationships, and how we think about other genders as well. So it's very important to have conversations analyzing the effects that pornography has on us and figuring out if it has a place in our lives, what that place is, and what should we tell our children about pornography, because we do need to be talking about it with them. Otherwise, they will encounter it on their own, either by accident or through curiosity, and who knows what path that will lead them down if they don't have the guidance of someone who's already familiar with the pitfalls of pornography and can talk with them about it in a calm and rational way and guide them toward living a loving, compassionate life with happy, healthy relationships, untainted by the influence of pornography. So today, it's going to be a very special episode. It's an episode that I've been thinking about and planning for a few weeks now, thinking that it was something that I wanted to do, and it's going to be a challenging episode. There isn't going to be any more explicit content or anything like that than there have been in previous episodes, and probably less than in a lot of those, but I'm going to be challenging your world view and a lot of the things that you probably take for granted and perhaps have never really taken a critical look and considered before. But I think it's very important to have these conversations because a lot of harm can come from blind acceptance of the way things have always been done, of traditions, of cultures, and cultural knowledge that has been passed down or assumptions that have been passed down that need to be re-examined once in a while and need to be thought about critically and taken and looked at from different angles. And we need to consider whether these actions and beliefs that we take for granted really belong in our present day society and in our future society, or if they are harmful and need to be purged. So, I'm going to start with the title of this podcast. Love People Use Things. I love that title. I fell in love with it as soon as I saw Matt create this podcast and use that title. I don't know if he made it up or if it was a genuine creation of his own or if he got it from somewhere else. I've actually never talked with Matt about where he got that title or what exactly it means to him. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but it also has a lot of depth, and it's made me think a lot about how I relate to people and how pornography, especially, trained me over time to view certain people, at least, as more objects than beings of their own right, deserving of compassion and love, and deserving not to be used for my own pleasure. So what does Love People Use Things mean to me? I'm kind of glad that I haven't talked with Matt about this because my opinion of it is pure. It comes exactly from me and it hasn't been melded with his yet. Maybe in a coming episode, he can talk a little bit more about what that title means to him. But today, I'm going to talk about what it means to me. So love people, use things. When I was a kid, I was very compassionate and empathetic. I wanted the best for everybody around me. I really cared about people. I think I was kind, and when I wasn't kind, when I was cruel or hurt someone either accidentally or in a fit of childish rage or a tantrum or something like that, I would feel terrible about it. I would feel really bad about it. I had a lot of guilt when those things happened, and I wanted to make it up to people. I wanted to see people happy and healthy. I wanted to help them whenever I could. I had a lot of compassion, and I think that's how most every one of us is born. We're born filled with love, and I don't know, maybe there are some people who are born sociopaths and have no empathy, but for the majority of us, we are born compassionate and empathetic, and we want the best for others. And unfortunately, life and other people can beat that empathy and that compassion out of us, either physically or emotionally or with neglect. We can go through a lot of things in our lives that hurt us deeply and wound us deeply, and we can become harder than I think we are meant to be, and I think that we should be and should strive to be. And some of us can end up taking out that pain on others and continuing that cycle of violence and abuse. But that's not what we should strive for. Absolutely not. Now, I remember when I first started searching for pornographic images online. I was just a horny kid who wanted to see pretty ladies. I was curious. And so all I really wanted to see at the beginning was pictures of pretty ladies in various states of undress, perhaps. I think that's a pretty natural desire for a young boy, but what was out there on the internet was more than I ever expected or ever wanted to see. I remember the first time I saw content that appeared to me to be coercive or non-consensual or aggressive, men behaving aggressively toward a woman, and feeling outraged about it and disgusted and just so shocked that someone would get pleasure out of hurting somebody else or be able to have pleasure while someone else in that situation is in pain. And that's a reaction that I had and held on to for a while, but unfortunately, I did lose it. Because over time, if you've heard about the influence of pornography and how that pornography addiction tends to progress, you've probably heard words like escalation and tolerance. Over time, I grew a tolerance to the material that I was looking at. And that means that the same sorts of pictures or videos that first got me really excited really no longer did much for me. It's like an alcoholic who starts being able to get a buzz off of one beer, but a few years in, once they've been drinking on an almost daily basis, they have a tolerance and they need more or stronger alcohol to get that same feeling or approach that same feeling. It's the same with any addiction. And that's what's happened to me. And I started to not only enjoy some of the content that at first repulsed me or disgusted me, but started actively seeking it out. And in the end, ended up needing that more extreme oftentimes more dehumanizing content in order to be excited and to become aroused. But that's not who I was, and it always disturbed me and disturbed my morality. I would rationalize it to myself, saying, of course, it's just fantasy, and these people and these images aren't really being hurt. It's just role play, and it's not really a big deal. And that's what I would tell myself. And maybe in some of those clips or videos or images, that was somewhat true. But subconsciously, on a subconscious level, I was being trained and conditioned to view women, relationships, and sexuality in a different way than I did naturally. So, there are all sorts of studies that have analyzed the effects of pornography exposure and consistent pornography use on our views of women, of men, of sex, and of rape or sexual violence. I'm going to read from one review of the literature. And this is not just one study, but a review of 109 publications containing 135 studies that were reviewed. And these studies all pointed to similar findings. Here's what it says. The findings provided consistent evidence that both laboratory exposure and regular everyday exposure to this content, pornography, are directly associated with a range of consequences, including higher levels of body dissatisfaction, greater self-objectification, greater support of sexist beliefs and of adversarial sexist sexual beliefs, and greater tolerance of sexual violence toward women. Moreover, experimental exposure to this content leads both women and men to have a diminished view of women's competence, morality, and humanity. It literally conditions us to view women more as objects than as people deserving of love and compassion and empathy. I've seen these effects many times, not just in my own life, but in the lives of my clients, and how they describe their relationship histories to me, and how they viewed sex and sexuality prior to quitting porn and coming to realize how much of an impact and influence that pornography had on how they viewed sex and sexuality, on how they've interacted with women or men or whatever partners they had. And I've seen the reverse happen once people quit pornography. I've seen in my own life such a greater capacity for compassion and empathy well up out of the center of my being after quitting pornography and allowing that influence to seep out of my life. And I was just much more interested in not just women, but everybody, every person in my life, and more engaged in conversations with them, more interested to find out about them. And I found myself just caring about their well-being to a much greater degree than I had for years. I think pornography made me selfish, and it made me think more about what I could get from people and how to accomplish my own selfish goals, rather than just wanting to help people, wanting to see the best happen for people, like I used to when I was a kid. And in relationships, I found myself so much more able to feel romantic love. I thought I had been in love before when I was using porn, but the truth is, I was incapable of it while I was using porn. And feeling the depth and breadth of that emotion off of pornography made me fully realize that fact. And many guys and women whom I have worked with say the same thing. So pornography teaches us to objectify and use others for our own selfish pleasure. It can also escalate to using sex workers. I've seen guys who started with pornography and get trained by that pornography to view sex as transactional, as purely physical, and as casual. And so they think, after all of this conditioning and training that happens subconsciously, that sex can be bought, or sex should be bought. But I've never seen this lead to happiness or satisfaction. It always leads to more hunger, and more frustration, whether you're trying to find satisfaction in pornography or in purchased sexual release. It never leaves one feeling satisfied or happy or proud or better about themselves. True romantic and sexual connection with someone whom we care about and whom cares about us leaves a lasting, glowing mark on our soul or our mind or whatever you believe in. And we can always look back on that and feel the warmth of that memory, the warmth of that connection that we made. But transactional sex or objectified sex, it takes something out of us, and it only leads to us being more frustrated and hungrier for what we are truly seeking, which is love and recognition. So this is where I'm going to get into the challenging part of this episode. If you're already here listening to Love People Use Things, you're probably on board with the idea that pornography is bad for us, that it has a negative influence on much of how we perceive ourselves and sexuality and others. But this idea that some people are for using and some people are for loving, that it's okay to use the bodies of prostituted women or of pornographic actors, actresses for our own pleasure with no regard for them as human beings, but that other people in our lives, our family, our friends, they deserve to be cared for and deserve to be loved. That idea that some people are for loving and some people are for using is the very root of violence. That idea is the seed out of which war and slavery and genocide and murder and all forms of exploitation are born. It doesn't start or end with pornography either. It's not simply a sexual matter. When we accept that idea that some people in this world deserve love and empathy and compassion, and others are there for us to use, or others are lesser than, that's when we start to accept violence into our hearts. We start to believe that it's okay to treat this person or this group of people lesser than we would treat someone in our own lives whom we care about. Where does this idea start? That's the question that I want to ask today. Some might say it starts with pornography, and for some people, that is a seminal moment in the development of this idea. But I disagree. I think it starts much earlier, and it's much more pervasive even than pornography. All right, here's where the challenge starts. Here's where I might start to make you think critically, I hope, about some ideas that you maybe have never thought critically about before, or when they were challenged, you laughed off that challenge as ridiculous. But here I go. As children, many of us probably had a dog or a cat or some other sort of pet, or at least had sufficient interaction with them to get to know them as beings. And for the most part, I'm sure that you wanted the best for those animals, that you wanted to see them happy and well-fed and having fun, playing, and didn't want to see them hurt and didn't want to hurt them. I know that many of us in childish experimentation or tantrums can hurt animals, like tug on a cat's tail or something like that. But most often when we see that actually hurts the cat, that the cat is suffering because of our interference, we feel bad about it because we recognize that even though a cat or a dog doesn't have the same cognitive abilities as a human, they can't do algebra or draw or such things like that we prize, yet they still have their own valuable experience of life. They still desire to live free from pain, to eat, to play, to love, to have children, just like we do. And we recognize that it's wrong to make a being like that with their own experience of life suffer or be in pain or die if it's not necessary. And that's just a natural state of being. I think most of us identify as animal lovers. If I went to a room full of people and asked, who here believes that it's fine, it's morally okay to hurt or kill an animal if it's totally unnecessary to do so? No one would raise their hands. No one would think that that's okay. Or if they did think that that was okay, then they would probably be ashamed to admit it. Now, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I have asked rooms of people that question before, and pretty much no one raises their hands. You might get the odd hunter who thinks, okay, yeah, if I don't raise my hand here, I'll be caught in a trap. But for the most part, people recognize that it's wrong to hurt or kill animals if you don't have to. That's pretty basic stuff, pretty basic morality. But if I ask the same room of people, so who here eats meat? Who here wears leather? Who here drinks milk? Most of the room will raise their hands. And I'm about to expose the hypocrisy of that. Because you put a child in a room with, let's say, a bunny rabbit and an apple. Do you think that they're going to kill the bunny rabbit, rip it apart, and start chewing on its bones and play with the apple? Or do you think that that child will eat the apple and play with the bunny rabbit and love the bunny rabbit? That is who we are, essentially. When we start out life, we are compassionate, we are empathetic, we automatically recognize that all beings with minds and bodies and a sense of the world, a sense of their own life, deserve respect and compassion and love. But our society starts to teach people from a very young age that certain beings, certain creatures are for loving, dogs and cats, taking care of, showing them respect and kindness, taking care of them when they're sick or hungry or thirsty, and other beings are for abusing, exploiting, and killing. It's fine to crowd pigs into cluttered sheds, filthy conditions, mutilate them without painkillers, cut off their tails, cut out their testicles, etc. Leave their wounds to rot, leave open sores, keep them in tiny cages for their whole lives, and then kill them by cutting their throats and letting them bleed out, and then cut up their bodies and sell their bodies. If someone did that to dogs, they'd be labeled a criminal. But because society has told us that these animals, dogs, are for caring for loving, for being compassionate towards, and these animals, pigs, are for killing, abusing, exploiting, and making money off of, that it's okay. And pigs and dogs, what are the differences between them? What is the difference that makes it okay to exploit, abuse, and kill a pig, but not make it okay to do the same to a dog? Pigs are smarter than dogs. It can't be intelligence. One has paws and one has cloven feet. Is that the difference that makes it okay to treat that being with disrespect and disdain and as an object or a machine or a slave, but treat the other being with love and respect and compassion? Is it the fact that one has fur and one has coarse bristles? One has, I don't know. What is the difference? You tell me. Eagles deserve to be respected. We want them to live out their lives in the wild. Don't want anyone to interfere with them. Chickens, it's okay to genetically modify their bodies so that they grow unnaturally quickly, end up with failing organs, and short, sickly, painful lives, until we kill them when they're just 6 weeks old for meat. It's okay to do that, but we should respect dogs and cats and eagles. Hopefully you start to see where I'm coming from here. And I'm sure that all sorts of objections are rising in your mind right now, and I'm going to go over a few of those soon. But first, for those of you who don't know, I am a vegan. And what a vegan is someone who chooses not to buy or consume products that come from animals because we recognize that those products are inherently exploitative toward those beings who we believe deserve respect and love and compassion, just like dogs and cats and humans do. The actual definition of veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. I've been vegan for about 9 years now. I wasn't born this way. I was raised in the same society that many of you listeners were raised in, thinking that it was fine and normal and natural and necessary to eat animals and their bodily excretions, dairy, cheese, milk, eggs, and that it was healthy for us. But as an adult, I came to realize several truths and start thinking critically about the things I had taken for granted for my whole life, and started to realize that, in fact, many of those things I had taken for granted were deliberate lies or were simply assumptions that were incorrect and that were passed down through generations from my own parents and their parents before them for hundreds and thousands of years throughout society. So I started to learn about health first. You always think from the commercials and the marketing that, for example, we need milk or dairy to have strong, healthy bones, or we need the protein from meat or fish or chicken to have big muscles and be strong and be athletic. Or we need some sort of nutrient that comes from animal products that we can't get from grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, beans, seeds, etc. All the foods that come from plants that don't have minds or brains or nervous systems, don't feel pain, don't suffer. There might be a few of you who object to that as well. I'm not going to get into that argument right now, but I think most people recognize the inherent moral difference between beating an animal to death and pounding a carrot into a mush. So, I started to learn more and more about what we actually now know about what is practically healthful for the human body. Because one of my first objections when I heard about vegetarianism and veganism was, well, it can't be good for you. You need meat, you need dairy, you need eggs. Well, I learned that that wasn't true. That not only was that not true, but that these animal products were the largest contributors to many of our deadliest diseases. Chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, heart disease, strokes, autoimmune disorders. I learned that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the largest organization of nutrition professionals in the world, recognizes plant-based diets, purely plant-based diets, vegan diets, as nutritionally sufficient for people of all stages of life, infants, kids, athletes, adults, pregnant women, older people, and not only sufficient, but that they offer health benefits over and above diets that include animal products. I was like, wow, okay. Well, I got to try this out for myself. I got to see if this is true. I can't believe everything you read. So I decided to give it a go. It wasn't that hard. I like to cook, so I got to experiment with some new recipes. Mostly just made more of the things that were already on my plate. Rice, beans, vegetables, legumes, more fruit, smoothies, salads, these sorts of things. And still day by day I thought, am I going to drop dead from lack of protein or what's going to happen? But instead I just felt better and better, stronger, got better performance in the gym, started getting sick less, got much fewer colds. My sinuses cleared up, which were chronically full. Always had a runny nose, probably from the dairy, and saw no reason to ever go back. Then I learned about how harmful animal agriculture is to our planet. And we talk a lot in our society these days about global warming and rainforest destruction, etc., our impact on the world oceanic pollution, plastic, that sort of a thing. But what many of us don't realize is that the most power we have to limit our negative impact on this earth is in our dietary choices and our product choices. And that animal agriculture is incredibly inefficient. Most of the corn and soy that we grow in this country goes not to humans, but toward animals. And then we get 1/16 the calories back in animal product. If we simply stopped feeding animals the crops that we grow and fed those instead to humans, we could feed an additional 800 million humans just from what we grow already in the United States alone. Our fishing, trawling practices are destroying the oceans. Most of the Amazon rainforest that has been deforested to graze livestock and to grow crops to feed livestock. Our planet is dying. 3% of wildlife on the earth dies off every year and is not replaced. It's easy to think of the state of things as normal, like it can continue on forever like this. If you've heard the analogy of the frog in boiling water, you know what I'm talking about. This is an old wives' tale. I don't know if it's actually true, but the story goes that if you put a frog in a pot of water and boil it slowly, the frog won't notice the change because it will happen slowly enough that it just stays in the pot of water until it boils to death. The same thing is happening to us on this planet. This planet is dying, and we are the ones killing it. And the most power that we as individuals have to reverse that process and stop killing our planet is in our dietary choices. 3 choices we make every day on what to eat. And lastly, I started to learn about the state of animal agriculture in the modern world and what factory farms are actually like. You see, if you have an idea of a farm as an idyllic place where animals are prancing out in the grass and live happy lives until they are killed for our profit, well, that's not the way things are done anymore. Over 99% of the animal products sold and consumed in the world are coming from factory farms, which are mechanized and optimized operations designed to extract as much product and profit from animals as possible, with no consideration for their status as living, feeling, thinking, desiring beings, deserving of love and compassion and respect. And that is a tragedy. But even if we were to treat these animals nicely during their lives, I realized it's still unnecessary and cruel and exploitative to kill them when they don't want to die. Morally, it's fairly simple. A being that does not want to die and you have no need to kill, you should not. You should not harm that being. You should not kill that being. You should allow them to live their lives as free as you would want to live your life. And that's the most basic principle at work here. And in today's society, when we have access to plentiful, cheap, and nutritious plant foods, we need to evolve past using animals for food, for clothing, for entertainment, for laboratory testing. And we need to start teaching our children to respect all other beings and their desires for a free, unhindered life. When I have a son or a daughter, I'm going to teach them about life and about respecting others. And imagine when I teach my son or my daughter, hey, Sally, you see that moth over there fluttering in the wind? She's beautiful, isn't she? Yeah, that moth, though she looks incredibly different from you, she has wings instead of arms and a bunch of legs instead of just 2, and she's tiny. She is alive, like you are alive. Her experience of life is very different. She sees different things. She smells different things. She hears different things. She thinks different things. Maybe her ability to think and wonder about the world is limited compared to your own. But she has her own experience of life and she wants to live. And we should allow her to live her life and admire the beauty of her form and her living out in the wild, but not interfere, not cage her for our own entertainment, not pull her wings off in some sort of experiment, as kids are wont to do. And when I teach my child this, when I teach her to respect the desire of all beings to live free and unmolested by others, when she grows up and encounters people of different colored skins or different religions or different cultures or with different opinions, I don't think that she is going to be fearful or hateful because of those differences. Because if I teach my daughter, my son, to respect a moth, to respect a mouse, to respect a cat or a dog, that child is not going to grow up to use and abuse and exploit humans. The thought would be unthinkable. But because we're taught from a young age that some beings are there for us to exploit, to profit off of, to use as we see fit, and some beings are for loving, once we accept that idea into our minds, we accept violence into our hearts. And you might think that humanity is inherently and necessarily violent, and that that fact will never change, and that we'll always use and abuse and exploit each other and other creatures. But I disagree. Maybe there will always be some level of that existing in this world. Most likely, yes. But we, you and I, are humanity. We are humanity, and we decide what humanity stands for by the actions that we take in our own daily lives and the values that we live by and pass on to our children. And we can create a better society, evolve past thinking of some beings as objects, as slaves, as machines. And when we do that, when we accept that animals deserve their own lives and don't deserve to be exploited for our profit, then we'll treat each other with much more compassion and love and respect. And that is something I believe 100%. You probably have a lot of questions and maybe a lot of objections to what I've been talking about today. I totally understand that. 9 years ago, when I was first considering this, I had the same questions, the same objections. And it took me a while to unlearn what I thought I knew and accept new truths. But I hope that you were able to keep an open mind throughout this episode, and I hope that you think critically about this and make your own decisions and learn more, learn as much as you can. I think the best place to start is a documentary called Earthlings. It's available for free to stream online. I think the website is nationearth.org, but I could be wrong about that. Just Google Stream Earthlings online. If you're interested in the environmental impacts of animal agriculture, you're an environmentalist, you should definitely watch Cowspiracy. That's Cowspiracy on Netflix. If you're interested in the health impacts of animal products, plant-based diets, all that nutritional stuff, you should watch What the Health on Netflix as well, and or go to nutritionfacts.org, which has lots of very helpful information. Hope I stimulated your brains today and challenged you a little bit more than you're usually challenged on a daily basis. I like to think that that's what this podcast is for. Bring up new ideas, discuss them, judge the merits of them, and maybe change our lives. Start living in a more compassionate way. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, for joining me today. I know it was a challenging episode that diverted a bit from our normal topic, but I think it's all very much related. And I think that we need to expand our definition of people and start loving all beings and respecting all life and using things, using inanimate objects, not using living beings. If you'd like to become a part of the Love People Use Things campaign and movement, then I would love it if you would check out our Patreon. Patreon is a platform where people like yourself can support the creators that they think are doing good in this world and making content that you really enjoy. If you support us at different levels per month, like $5 a month or $10 a month, There are various perks and benefits and rewards that you can get access to. Go check those out on Patreon. One of those, I believe, is the Love People Use Things t-shirt, which I am wearing right now. It's quite dapper, if I do say so myself. And for those of you watching on my YouTube channel, I'll give you a peek. For those of you listening, my YouTube channel is Noah B.E. Church. You can find videos of me making these podcasts there, as well as other videos that I make. If you'd like coaching on any aspect of porn addiction or porn-induced sexual dysfunction recovery, you can find me and ways to work with me at my website, addictedtointernetporn.com. And my book, Whack Addicted to Internet Porn, is also available there for free as a PDF if you sign up for my newsletter. So you can get all the basics there about porn addiction, porn-induced sexual dysfunctions, recovery stories, and really start thinking about how you can improve your life by leaving pornography behind. All right, everybody. I think that's it for today. I always trip over myself when ending these things because there's always something that I seem to forget to tell you, but I think that's it for today. I'll see you in another couple of weeks. Tune back in next week for another episode from my friend Matt Frad, and have a wonderful porn-free day.